Run a child flow is the coolest action in Power Automate. You cannot find it up here in Create. You must go to Solutions. So we go click that and we create a new solution. Click up here and we can give our solution a name. A solution is a nice way to group your workflow so it's easier to organize, share, and manage. Today we want to create a flow that takes in webinar registrations from a Microsoft Forms, that is the trigger, and that trigger wants to trigger a child flow that handles those registrations. This is clever because then we can also have multiple triggers in. We have multiple forms that trigger our child flow. We also call this a dispatcher and performer. The dispatcher is the one that triggers and the performer is the one that processes those. So we can give it a name, the solution. This can be webinar registrations. Since this is just a toy example, we don't need to customize it. We will choose the default publisher and hit create. Here we have an empty solution in 10 seconds. Now I want to create the forms to take the data into our flow and feed it to the child flow. Go to Microsoft Forms. So this is a place where we can create surveys to users so they can fill it in. Here I want to choose new form. I can choose to draft with Copilot, a really cool tool that can, through natural words, help you. We will not use it today, but in case you want to learn all about Copilot 365, I created the complete guide to it up here in the right corner. Let's call this one Copilot Studio Webinar. That's the first webinar we want participants in today. Please do this with me. You will learn so much faster. We will take two inputs. We will just take name, required, and I also want to take email, required. Not the most sophisticated forms, but I think you get the point. You can add more entries for the user to fill in. Now we can share this with the user, and each time a user fills that out, it looks like this. I can collect responses, copy the link, open up a new tab, paste it in, and then the user can fill in name, email, submit. Then we want our child flow to send the data to an employee of our company, which today is me. And we also want to store if that employee approves the participant. Later on, we will create another forms so we can really leverage the child flow and see the advantage. Let's go to OneDrive and create the Excel where the participant information will be stored if they are approved. This is my OneDrive, the root I opened up in the browser. You can use the File Explorer to find the OneDrive here as well. Pick Add New. Take Excel Workbook. This opens up a blank Excel book. It's called Book. Let's call this one Webinar Registrations.xlsx. Then we can add some headers to our data. So I want to store the name, email, webinar, and approved by, who said yes to this participant. We also want to format this as a table. So what you can do is to mark the 4 headers, go up to Format as a Table if you are in Home, and choose a design. I'll just go with the standard like this. Our table has headers. In fact, we only have headers right now. We have not filled in any data. So here I can click OK. If you click anywhere in the table, you will see this table design. You can go click it. Right now it's named Table 1. And let's call this one Webinar Approved Participants. Then hit enter. You will also see that for some reason you might see that this has gone back to book, but it will be stored in the OneDrive as webinar registrations. That's just a weird OneDrive Excel bug. But yeah, again, it will be in this. We can now close this. We're done here for now at least, and we just have the OneDrive. I can try to refresh it. Scroll down and you will see the webinar registrations. We're ready to create the child flow. So let's go do that. We will call this the performer. So to create a child flow, you must be in a solution. Hit New, Automation, Cloud Flow. And here it's very important to create the child flow in Power Automate again that you choose instant. Let's call this webinar performer and choose to manually trigger a flow and hit create. This opens up in the old design experience, which is again a little bit weird. It's just a Power Automate that tricks with us. If yours looks like this, then we need to change it to the new experience, but we'll do that in like 1 minute. If you are in the new, simply just do the same things as we do here. Click the manually trigger flow. So this is the child flow. Here we send data to. We want to send the name, email, and webinar from the trigger flow. We choose a text. First, it's called name. Add an input again. Text. Email, add an input, webinar, like this. So what are we going to do once we get this data? We send it to an employee on Teams or email. We send an approval for them to approve this participant. Hit new step. Here you want to say start and wait for an approval. The approval type, well, we only send it to one approver. I'll just pick the first to respond. So the first to respond can either approve or reject this participant. Then we can create a title. That could be approve webinar participant. Assigned to, well, I'll just pick myself. I can search for it to come up here, Anders Jensen. And then we can choose to send a message with this approval. That could be something like, do you want to approve? And let's pick in the name. So if you don't see this, that could be if this one is hidden, or sorry, it looks like this, then, and it disappeared, then you can always go back and choose add dynamic content and scroll a little bit down. Because we take the data from the ingoing variables coming in from manually trigger flow. Don't pick the username, it's important. Pick the name. We say with the email, again hard-coded text in. Choose the email from down here, not the user email. And I say for the, pick the webinar name, and I can say something like webinar and a question mark. So really simple one. Hit save, and then we want to go to the new experience. We will test this little step in our child flow. Saving. Once this is saved, I will go back here. So hit the arrow. In case you don't see it here, it will show up. Otherwise, try to refresh, but it will show up. Open it again, click it, say edit, and now you will be in the new design experience. Let's go test it. That is, we will just manually fill in name, email, and webinar. Can hit test, manually test our child flow or the performer. I can hit continue. Let's have a name. I can choose Stine, like this. And which webinar does Stine want? She wants Copilot Studio, and choose run. Then we will get a Teams notification and an email where we can approve this particular user. Now you can see our flow is running. It will send this start and wait for an approval. Here we have it. It will show up in your Teams. Do we want to approve Stine with the email for the Copilot Studio webinar? I hit approve. Then it says that this one is approved. Fine, I can go back to my flow. It worked just as I want. This action produces some outputs. I can, I can hit this, and then I can see the outputs. I can choose show raw outputs. Here I see the outputs. I want to grab some of this, and the best way to do it is to create an expression. That is because we have an array. I will talk about what this means. Open up a notepad. I always recommend opening up a notepad when we want to create expressions. That is, expressions that we can use in Power Automate. First of all, I need to say I want to look in the outputs of this start and wait for an approval. To do so, I can say outputs, parentheses start. Let me enlarge this a bit. And then I want the name of that action. Start, a space is an underscore, and wait for an approval. Have a single quotation mark and a parenthesis again. So the outputs, and that is from the action start and wait for an approval. Then I also want to say, well, in that output, go into the body of this JSON. You can see it's a JSON because it starts and ends. It starts with a curly bracket and ends with a curly bracket down below. What I want to do is to move into the body. So I have a question mark and then a hard bracket, single quotation mark. Then I say move into the body. The next level, that is the responses. You can see they have different levels. We will do that by having a forward slash, saying responses like this, a single quotation mark and a hard bracket end. Because this responses here, that is an array. You can see that by this hard bracket here and here. It's an array of one item. Usually an array will have multiple items that is of the same type. And here we have information about the responder. So I want to grab the first item in the responses array. We will do that by simply going up here, hard bracket start, 0 and a hard bracket end. Please do this with me, you'll learn so much faster. And then I want to say, in the first item here, then I want to go into the responder and the email. So I will say responder in single quotation mark, forward slash email, single quotation mark, hard bracket. This is the expression that we want to get out the email here. So mark it, Control C to copy it, and let's go back to our flow and build further. You will do that by hitting edit. Now I want to ask, did this manager approve the participant? I do that by clicking plus, add an action, find a condition. A condition asks a question that can be answered with true or false. I want to click up here, click the lightning, and choose outcome. In case you don't see it, simply just click see more and scroll a little bit down, but it should be in around number 3. If this is equal to approved, then I want to add something to our Excel. Like this. This also means that I know I'm here if this is true. If it's false, I'll just forget. But you could send an email rejecting the participant or whatever you want. We will just build it, go really simple today. In true, I will add a row into a table. Here it is in the Excel Online. First of all, I want to go into the OneDrive for Business, the document library, that is documents or documenter in Danish. Then I need to find the file. I can do that by hitting open folder up here, and you will find the webinar registrations.xlsx here. We will also click the table. Sometimes it's fairly slowly to load, and here I can see that's the name I gave the table, webinar approved participants. Then it advanced parameters. Here we will find the columns that we can fill in. You can hit show all, and you will see name, email, webinar, and approved by. So the name, hit the lightning. Scroll down again. Now you can pick the name. Please enter your input. The email, hit the lightning, email. The webinar, yes, hit the webinar. Approved by. Here we want to hit an expression. So click the FX. Control V to paste it in. Hit add. There's a bug that's saying that the expression is invalid. Simply just hit add twice and it will go down here. That is our expression. When we have the expression, that is, we have it in place here, we can talk about this child flow. A child flow must always end with a response to the parent flow. So it gets triggered by the parent flow, and then in the end, all the way down here, we will click the plus, add an action. And this is where you can usually go wrong. Simply just find a respond to a Power App or flow. Hit it in here. You just need to tell that this is okay or whatever you want. You can add an output, taking text. Let's have a status. And let's call this success. Our performer is now done. This is clever. That is the child flow. We want to reuse this not only for the Copilot Studio webinars, but for a lot of other webinars, for a lot of other forms that comes in with a name, email, and webinar. What I can do now is to hit publish. We're now publishing the flow. And that is, we have it ready for production. So once that is published, I can close it here, and we're still in the solution here. Here we have the webinar performer. Now we want to create the flow that will trigger this child flow. We want to create a dispatcher that triggers the performer or child flow. Here you want to have new automation, cloud flow, and now you want an automated cloud flow, since this flow needs to run each time a person fills out the Copilot Studio webinar. So this flow name, this will be Copilot Studio webinar dispatcher, trigger if you rather want that, like this. We will choose when a new response is submitted and hit create. So again, it opens up in the old. Pick the form, that will be the Copilot Studio webinar. Here we have it, the Copilot Studio webinar. And I also want to get the details once a response is getting received. So have a get response details. The form ID, that is again the Copilot Studio webinar. The response ID, that will be the response ID. Hit save again. We want to open up in the new once this is saved. So what you can do is go back again. It will take a few seconds to show up. Here it is. Move inside it and hit edit. And now it will open up in the new experience. Now we are ready to run our child flow. So I'll hit the plus, add an action, run a child flow. There you go. So I want to select the flow, and that is the webinar performer. You can see I have a few other flows here I can choose from, the webinar performer. Now I can choose which name do I want to send to the child flow, and that name comes from my forms here. So I'll have the name, click this, in the get response detail, choose the name. The email, hit the lightning. Here you want to choose the email, that is the email that the user provided and not necessarily who was logged in from your organization and answered. So choose email. The webinar, we will hard code this. And that is because this Copilot Studio webinar, we want to create multiple triggers, or at least 2 in this case, but we can do this. I can just say Copilot Studio. We will send that in. I can hit publish again. Now you will see that we have an error. So when you see the update the child flow for action, run the child flow to not use run only user connections, that is, we need to update the performer. So please stay here, go back to solutions, nothing wrong, go into the performer, click it. This is the overview. So when you see this error, you want to go into it, scroll down to run only users, hit edit here. Then in connections used, choose the use this connection, click OK. And in the Excel, choose use this connection. Hit save. And now we can put that in place for the child flow here. We can go back here, and once I hit publish, now you will see that we can publish it. That's it. That's just what we wanted to test. So now we can test the flow. And let me again just close this. I have the solutions here, so let's also close this for now. Let's start to fill in some answers. I want to see that it can trigger the dispatcher flow, and then it can call the child flow. So let's fill in 2. We will have Bianca, who wants to participate. Bianca with the email, bianca.email.com. Submit. Submit another response. And here we can say Carlo with carlo@email.com. By the way, if you want to learn more about Power Automate, Copilot Studio, and everything else, I've created a complete training package for just $50. You can find that in the description below. So now we have 2 filled in. This also means that I got 2 approvals here in Teams. I have, if I want to approve Bianca, here. And I also have, if I want to approve Carlo, like this. So now it just said that we approved both. Then I want to go into the solutions. I can start with the dispatcher. Go in and click that just to inspect. I want to see that I have 2 succeeded flows. I can close it. I also want to go into the performer, that is the child flow. I want to see that I have the 2 there as well. So they ran successfully. You can see we have our test and we have these 2. We also saw that they came to Teams, so it worked. And I can move into my OneDrive. And here I can go down to webinar registrations. And here you can see it filled in Bianca, Carlo, and it even got this Anders Jensen, the approval. Like, just do this so we can see what's going on here. Now I want to leverage child flows, because right now it's quite static. We could have created this in one flow. Now I want to show you the advantage of child flows. That is, if we have multiple triggers, not only triggers, but if we want to reuse things, then child flows is the nut. So let us close this Copilot Studio here, and let's create another form. Again, so here I want to say OpenAI Advanced. This is also something that you will get in the course package below, by the way. Not only webinar, but a complete course. And let's just take a name again. Required. And now it will become really easy. So I take name and email like this. So then we want to create another dispatcher, and then we can collect responses here. So if I want to do this, then you will see we have the OpenAI Advanced Webinar. We will wait 2 seconds filling this in. I will go back to Power Automate, and then we will want to create another dispatcher. Let's just repeat what we did here. So automation, Cloudflow automated, and OpenAI Advanced Webinar, or dispatcher to stay webinar dispatcher. And then when a new response is submitted. And please, if you like this live coding videos, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. That will really help me and my channel a lot. And I say thank you. The form ID. Well, now I need to find the OpenAI here. And we will have a new step saying get response details. I like this. We will pick the form, which was the OpenAI Advanced Webinar. I like this. The response ID, which is here, and let's again save it. We need to be able to publish it, so I'll just save it. This is the old experience again. We need to be in the new. So I go back here, and then I go to the OpenAI Advanced Dispatcher. So it will look completely like the ones that we did before. Now we can run the same child flow. So now it's where we take advantage. We can reuse things. Run a child flow here. We will select the flow. That will just be the webinar performer. Now I just need to fill in name. And that is from up here. I have the name. We have the email. And the webinar now, that will be OpenAI Advanced. Once that is placed, that's just how easy it is. Now we can just reuse the child flow, the performer flow. We published it now, so I can hit close here, window overview. Now let's try to fill this one in. This is Dian. Then I want to click submit. We need to, you can see it here, it works. So I can hit approve, and then it's done here. You will also see that we can go into webinar registrations and our child flow works. Your next advanced Power Automate video is right here. It's around Power Automate Desktop, how you can do web scraping.